Daily Detroit is brought to you by the community. Support our work at patreon.com/Daily Detroit.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to your Daily Detroit, sharing what to know and where to go in Southeast Michigan, coming to you from the studio at Techtown. It is May 1st. It is time for it to be May. It's not going to be May. It is May. It is May. And you hear two voices with me, and those voices to the left of me are
Devon O'Reilly.
And to the right of me,
Norris Howard.
And I'm Jer Stays, stuck in the middle with you. So let's get into this thing. We got a lot to talk about. I can't promise where this episode's going to go, friends.
No, when you get it, three of us, it's anyone's guess.
It is anyone's guess, and I'm just happy to be here. I don't get to be on the show with Devon very often, so
it's our most requested thing.
Really?
To put the two of you together.
Give the people what they want.
And here we are.
I don't have the rights, but I'd play Stevie Wonder's Ebony and Ivory, but I have it for you too.
Sure, there's some appropriate songs for that. But speaking of appropriate or inappropriate songs, we were discussing just before we came on air something that Norris and I want to chat a little bit about.
Yeah.
Because I am a hip hop fan. I don't know how many people know this who listen. I grew up listening to hip hop, so I'm a fan. I become less engaged in what's going on in hip hop as I've gotten older. But I just know, just because of social media and being aware of things, I know that there is a raging beef going on right now with Drake and Kendrick Lamar, and J. Cole's involved, and frankly, a ton of people are involved in this. But I think people want to know. This is a pop culture question because diss tracks are being released, and it doesn't seem, Norris, like I can get a handle. Last night I was scrolling and it seemed like, oh, Kendrick just dropped a game ender on Drake.
Yeah.
But then people are like, oh, Drake, the lyrics were really basic and simple. This was not the cruise missile that it was purported to be. So let's just take a minute to talk about hip hop beef, because I was 13 years old when I discovered Hit 'Em Up. On the other side of my California Love single CD that I had gotten from Borders, and my life was never the same after that. I don't even think my parents knew that song existed in a musical library and that I was listening to it. But for those who are not listening, that is the number one beef song of all time, probably, and the number one diss track of all time.
1,000%.
So that's where I kind of cut my teeth and learned. So Norris, what is going on?
So really a lot of this stems all the way back from, Drake, J. Cole, and Kendrick Lamar kind of seen as the inheritors of hip hop, right? They're like the new GOATs, so to speak. Like after Jay-Z and Nas, they are the next greatest. And obviously Drake's super popular. Kendrick Lamar, Nobel Prize winner. J. Cole, a paragon for sort of the purists. And so you have this three-headed dragon of hip hop that they've been kind of orbiting around each other and sending kind of veiled shots at one another to say who's the best, who's not the best. And then Drake and J. Cole put out this song First Person Shooter together, almost burying the hatchet between them, but in a way kind of also saying Kendrick, you are kind of away from us. We're it's this 1-2 punch and you are over there on your lonely. Well, that didn't go over well with Kendrick Lamar, and J. Cole, then it's revealed, has more beef with Drake, more than was originally revealed. And so J. Cole disses first, and then I think behind the scenes he gets wind of what Kendrick Lamar is brewing. He literally goes on the internet and apologizes. He literally goes online and says, guys,
a rarity in beef.
He literally says, you know what? This is silly. This is stupid. I don't want no parts of this. I'm just going to go back to Fayetteville and, be a hippie. And Kendrick
so left the two heavyweights.
Yeah. So now it's Drake and Kendrick left. Drake drops this called Push Ups. And it was okay. It was fairly standard as a diss song.
Are you being objective, or you have a dog in this fight?
I'm trying my best to be objective. Okay. I will agree. I am more of a Kendrick fan than a Drake fan.
Well, he's got more street. He's a better. I think most people would say he's a better lyricist. Yeah, he's a better songwriter. There's a lot of Drake is a big pop star.
And that's what I'm into. Than more than the poppy stuff. But I'm trying to be subjective and say, listen, Drake, great artist. Kendrick, better rapper, but Drake, great artist. And Drake puts out this diss. It's okay. And people go, all right, well, Kendrick, he's got to respond. And a month goes by and people are just like, well, what's this Kendrick? And on a random Tuesday, the last day of April, he drops arguably, in my opinion, the greatest diss song since Ether, since Nas dissed Jay-Z on Stillmatic way back in 2002. Like
that was a great beef. Nas somehow won the beef with Ether, but like Jay-Z emerged as he was just that powerful. He like take the hit. And the takeover wasn't bad. I like the takeover too.
The takeover is great. The takeover is a great first shot.
But yeah, it's widely accepted that Ether was the kill shot in that beef, but somehow Jay-Z was such a just a massive thing that he just absorbed it and kept it.
He's not a businessman. He's a businessman.
I use that line a lot myself.
But this and listen, if you are a hip hop head, I'm gonna tell you right now, you need to go and listen to this. Open up Genius, because if you are not well versed in everything that he's talking about, most of this will fly over your head. But if you have been entrenched in hip hop culture, he's got a line that says, listen, I hope that Drake and J. Cole are my actual friends. I hope that at the end of the day we're friends. But if they're not, I'm YNW Melly, who is a rap artist, who is a paranoid schizophrenic, who literally went crazy and killed his friends. So
like some Eminem stuff.
Yeah. So he went crazy. So definitely go and listen to this. This is a moment in hip hop that many of us have been waiting for nigh on 15 years.
Here's the thing for me. I'm just waiting for some restaurant in town to start serving raging beef.
I've had shaky beef.
Maybe sexy steak. I feel like that's the kind of place that might do it, or Experience Suzu or something.
I've had shaky beef places, and it's pretty good. Flowers of Vietnam has some great shaky beef.
So what's shaky beef?
I don't know, Jared. It's like really nice. It's a really interesting beef dish that I don't know how it's shaking, but it's just a really good.
Get another expert to explain another kind of beef to you.
Yeah. I'm mostly into ground or thick cut filet.
Prime cut, sirloin.
Prime cuts.
Well, you know who else has beef?
Who does that?
Bally and Xfinity.
And I've got beef with them. Speaking of, I'm about to drop a diss track.
This is the beef show.
This is the beef show.
It's infuriating.
That's the title, The Beef Show. All right, let me set it up for people in case you don't know. You woke up this morning and, or like you weren't looking at your screens this morning. Detroit sports fans will have to seek alternatives to watch their favorite teams as there's a dispute over fees between Diamond Sports Group, the parent company of Bally Sports, and Comcast. As a result, 19 Bally regional sports networks have gone dark for Comcast subscribers. This includes Detroit. This impacts Detroit in a big way because of the Tigers. Also, I believe they have the rights to the Wings and the Pistons. They're not in season right now, but obviously this is a thing. Comcast says the Diamond Sports Group declined multiple offers, leading to a loss of rights to the programming. Comcast, on the other side of the beef, says that, they've been trying to make this happen, and they will automatically credit $8 to $10 a month to customers for the unavailable Bally Sports channels. This opens just a bunch of questions to me about sports, Detroit, watching them, all these things. I want to state here that, number one, I think this is terrible for fans. And number two, I looked into the price of the app to do it without streaming services because Anyway, Devon.
I don't care about the beef between Comcast, Xfinity, and Diamond Sports and yada, 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 who's probably going to go bankrupt and get bought by someone else anyway. They're clearly losers and a failure of an organization. I don't care about their issues. I care about us. How the hell can we watch our sports? Tigers right now, who are above 500, having a pretty damn decent season, one of the best we've had in some years. And the fans are the ones who are losing on this. And so whatever needs to get figured out, whoever needs to exchange money, get a golden parachute, whatever needs to happen, figure it out, because this is ridiculous. This is borderline criminal that people in the city of Detroit and the surrounding area of Detroit cannot watch our baseball team. So I don't know what the answer is, but figure it out, because this is ridiculous.
I don't think that is borderline criminal. I think it is criminal. I think that the fans and the citizens of Metro Detroit have a right to be able to watch their sports teams. And I think one of the main things that really irritates me about this is that there are no network TV options for these teams. Like back in the day, there used to be a network TV option. It used to be no matter what, I got a game a week. no matter what.
And you know what? Maybe you might not remember, but I remember back in the 80s when it was on Channel 4 and there was that roaring tiger in the circle and the whole like on-air TV. Now, I know that like the economics of all these things have changed. These teams are very dependent on this
On the
revenue
TV deals, yeah.
and they like getting like a check about it as opposed to having to do it themselves. But at what point do they start producing it themselves? I mean, already we know from the details of Jason Benetti's contract that it's the Tigers, not Bally Sports, that pay him. And I think that that's a hedge. And I wonder if there's some kind of positioning going on here because it hasn't been approved by regulators yet, but Amazon is going to be powering some of the stuff for Bally Sports for like the back end and everything. And I wonder if there's this whole thing of like, is Amazon going to sweep in? Is there this or that? And man, the fans are just the losers on this.
I think they definitely will because they've already made headways into a sport that I watch very often, which is the Premier League, and came to a deal to carry some of the more premium matches there. And I think as we start to look at really sort of the bifurcation of sports content, like in the case of just baseball, there's some network TV, there's Bally Sports, then there's the MLB TV, and then there's all these league pass packages that you can get. And I think for a lot of people and a lot of consumers, and as much as I hate to say this, when it comes to a brand like Amazon, for most people, that's just going to be the best option.
But if there's Amazon in the mix, then there's no need for Comcast.
There won't be, and that's Comcast's fault. The fact that they can't come to the table and get a deal for this done, they will lose.
Yeah, and I agree. It's one of those things where like, yeah, you don't want to fight for the little guy. Oh, Amazon's the big player in this. I don't care. I want Jeff Bezos to step on them all if it means that we get actual access to sports. So throw your money around, throw your wallet around Bezos. Buy it up and make it happen. Because at the end of the day, people like us don't care. I don't care. I'm an Amazon Prime member, as most people are. Plenty of people use Amazon. Like, if that's the way I can get it, then I'll take it.
And that's going to be the big factor too. Is that when I think about a lot of these sports packages, right? Like I have Sling TV and Peacock and Amazon. Okay, I had Amazon no matter what for Prime. So everything I get on Amazon Prime Video is extra. Mm-hmm. That is how I view it.
Yeah.
And for many people, that's how they view it. If you could turn around and tell me that I could watch the Tigers, essentially, I'm going to, in my mind, think for free because I'm already paying for Amazon Prime regardless, then that's a coup. It's a super W, not just for Amazon, but for the consumer as well. And I think when it comes down to Comcast, Xfinity, whatever you want to call them, Bally Sport, and any of these regional players, we lament the loss of the regional power or the local power when it comes to media. Obviously, we did that for newspapers, so on and so forth. But in this case, this shouldn't happen. This should be an impossibility. It should be really no way for somebody like Bezos and Amazon to come in and say, we will be the best option for local sports content. That should be impossible.
Multiple people have dropped the ball, and I'll add one more thing, and this isn't pontificating, but the Illiches have owned the Wings and the Tigers for I don't know how long, 20 plus years at least, let's say that much. You own two sports teams, you got a lot of money. I'm so surprised that they didn't at some point create their own network. It's too late now because the money's changed. Mm-hmm. But back when it wasn't that crazy to create your own network, MSG did it. The Dolans did it with the Knicks and the Rangers and stuff. And MSG is a multi-billion-dollar company. They did really well with it. Different market, but still, I'm actually surprised that the Illiches didn't actually attempt to create their own network at one point.
Well, looking at the prices on this stuff, it's $19.99 a month for the Bally Sports app, $189 a year. And there's also missed opportunities with like MLB TV. It's stupid that there's local blackouts. Like it should just be a thing that you get. Like there's just so much confusion here that isn't pro-consumer. Now, if you make that price $9.99, I might be interested in it.
But the thing is the reason for the local blackouts is because the local networks used to own that.
Yeah.
There's no
and they still do technically.
They still technically do, but now that we're in this new paradigm, there's kind of no reason for that to still exist, to be perfectly honest with you.
Yeah.
And so, now that we're in this new era, or I don't even really want to call it a new era, and I'm glad you brought up the point of pricing, Jared, because $20 a month is way too much to watch the Tigers and the Pistons. No disrespect to those teams, but that's too much to watch the Tigers and the Pistons.
I mean, we celebrate over 500 here, but let's be honest, over 500 is still... That's the minimum bar of watching.
Yeah. And so, for me, when I think about when I'm going to sit down and watch a game of baseball, which is already like, that's a big ask, right? To sit and watch a game of baseball on TV. I'm definitely not paying $20 to go do it, because if I'm paying $20, I might as well just pay 10 more and go to the ballpark. Like that's the big difference. And I think, when we look at what the future for this deal and the sports market of Detroit could be, it gives me a really bad taste in my mouth, and I'm concerned because Detroit is still, I'm not sure if we're top 10 anymore, but in my mind, we're still the top 10 sports market in the country, and it is absurd that people cannot turn on their TVs and see the Tigers play.
This leads to a bigger question for me, though. Is sports now becoming just American football? Because even with our coverage, we'll do stuff about different sports and whatever, but you know what nails it, even though it's the middle of the offseason or whatever, it's always football. And people, like, how many people have become like football only fans? Because now with the extension of the season, it's going to be football almost the entire year now. And then the conversation is all football.
You know what the biggest factor of that is? It's easy to watch.
Yeah.
Even though it's still, they're still spreading out. You're right.
It's easy to watch. Yeah. It comes on CBS and Fox. There it is. Yeah. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to go anywhere. And it's even further bifurcated because we're an NFC team. So we coming on Fox.
Yeah.
Period.
And then ESPN is just constantly talking about it. And FS1 is constantly talking about it. So you're just inundated with information and updates and all that stuff. So yeah, I mean, it's a chicken and the egg thing.
Yeah. And the NFL has done a great job at making their product easy, available, constantly consumable. It's the shortest season of all the major sports, and yet it's talked about more than almost all the other sports combined.
Well, they do a great job of doing their offseason, though. Like, if you think, I mean, obviously we're extra steeped in the draft here this year, but you've got the draft, you've got the combine, you've got all of the trade talk, and people are really like fired up about it. I remember when I grew up, it was all about, baseball was America's sport. And here in Detroit,
they're running third now.
Yeah, and like hockey was a thing here, Hockey Town, the late 90s and all of that stuff. But now it seems like if you're talking sports, you're talking football. And I feel like I'm losing something because I'm an all sports fan.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, again, let's go back there. This isn't because people are becoming less interested in the sports. This is some BS between the corporations and the companies that are hashing this out. We still love sports, and Detroit is still a great sports town, as Norris said. So it's not like we're the reason why this is happening. Like, it's not our fault that these a-holes can't get it together. So I will say, like, no, wait a second. If it's on TV, we still will watch, especially if teams are good.
So what you're saying is if these three leagues, the NHL, the NBA, and the MLB, could get it together where you could watch this stuff easier, more people will be tuned in.
Absolutely. And you've seen it with the NBA. I mean, the NBA, again, has ascended in recent years, and they have a lot of things going for them. They have the players, the personalities in the NBA are bigger than any other sport. The people sell. LeBron, Steph, KD. Like, they have the best. They've got it locked down on, like, selling the people and the superstars. And so they've got an edge there, and they've done well with it. And you can, like, to Norris's point, you can catch them on TBS, TNT, ESPN, ABC.
It's everywhere.
Amazon. So they're going to get a huge Amazon deal. So NBA is a very younger brother to the NFL. I mean, they're still not where they are, but they're at least on the right path, I think. Like, they're doing the right things.
But the interesting point about that is that when you look at statistically, when you're talking about youth sports viewership, there's only one growth sport in America amongst youth viewership, and that's soccer.
I hear the groans now of some of the audience, but I'm with you.
Listen, but it's the truth. But I think a reason for that is because the NFL, the MLB, the NBA definitely does it, but the NFL, the MLB, and the NHL have not embraced social media and constant onlineness in the same way that soccer is done. So by the combination of doing all those things, the NFL is in the spot that it's in because it has mastered the broadcast apparatus of America and in part the world. The issue now becomes, what is the next frontier? Because you cannot go and watch an NFL game online for $2 or for virtually free. It's not possible. You can do that for soccer. And that's the thing that I think is starting to set that sport apart amongst the younger generation. And I think as long as the MLB and the NHL, and as we're, because we're talking about this deal, as long as stuff like this is happening amongst the suits, those sports will die. And not die like go away and we never play baseball again.
People stop caring.
But people will stop. People will stop caring. It'll be the same. It'll be the same thing that happened to tennis. Like tennis had a moment in the '90s and the early 2000s, and now.
Yeah, and not to belabor, but baseball is in real trouble because they have not done a good job of selling the sport, selling the players. They've tried to do stuff to speed up the game a little bit, which I'll give them kudos to that, I guess. But
they don't support the youth.
Yeah.
How many schools in the city? I'm just using Detroit as an example. How many schools in the city of Detroit in DPS have a full blown baseball team?
I have no idea.
Not a lot.
Okay.
I can tell you that. But almost all of them have basketball and football teams.
Well, let's talk about another type of entertainment, getting high.
So after all the beef,
we've got to chill. We've got to
come down, you hit the peace pipe and come down.
Exactly. That's what a story arc for this episode. Start with beef, end with peace pipe.
After consuming this, you may want beef. Here's a story in case you're not caught up with it. The Drug Enforcement Administration is planning to reclassify marijuana as a less dangerous drug. This is a big shift in policy. This move would require the White House Office of Management and Budget's approval, but this would basically acknowledge that cannabis has medical uses and lower abuse potential. Now, this doesn't legalize it, but it would put it in Schedule 3 along with ketamine and some steroids. This decision is basically part of this move to pardon many Americans convicted of simple possession. Critics argue that marijuana could still be a gateway drug. Others think it should be alcohol. I'm interested to talk about this for a few reasons. One, because although Michigan has this huge consumption number as far as sales with marijuana, the marijuana industry in the state has not lived up to necessarily what we expected as far as runway and everything, because there's so much supply and all that stuff. So I wanted to get you all's thoughts before we left for the day.
Yeah, so I think when I see this, I think it's really interesting because if you look at some of the other Schedule II drugs, we're talking about stuff like oxycodone and cocaine and so on and so forth. And so I think, Devon, I have a question for you. Does this ease some of the restriction on marijuana retailers? Like, does it allow them to kind of participate in like FDIC insured financial institutions?
I think it's hard to say. Like everything that's been going on in the last few years with this industry is like the devil's in the details, and like the headlines you get, these attention grabbing headlines about what the new frontier of cannabis is going to be. And then you don't hear anything because it's all getting hashed out behind the scenes legally, and like what are the legal ramifications, and then the lawyers get involved. And so it's like it's still one of those things where business and a big B is still hesitant to really touch this stuff, no pun intended. But they're really still hesitant to kind of get involved in this and invest. And I think that there was a lot of headwind to it, and like, okay, this could be a big thing. I think that's died down a little bit, and kind of people have tempered their expectations, whether this was going to be, a multi-billion-dollar industry locally, maybe it's a couple $100 million industry locally. So I think people have tempered their expectations of what this actually means. But people are still figuring out what it means. And so I'm not sure, like the headlines are great. But I'm not sure what the impact is yet. From a business standpoint.
Although Michiganders, I think we're close to leading the nation, if not lead the nation in consumption, because it's a big thing here. It seems like there's been a lot of vertical integration and consolidation where we thought maybe there would be all these different opportunities to spread this out. And it turns out that, no, it's basically going to consolidate and just do a few companies.
Well, I mean, to be honest with you, that's partially the city of Detroit's fault for dragging their feet.
But in the region in general and in the state, even so, you've got these larger companies outstate consolidating and then buying each other up.
But that's the story of capitalism. I mean, it's marijuana, cannabis industry is finding out that they're not that different from every other industry in America, where you get all these disparate companies who kind of start up, and some people do it better than others. And at the end of the day, you just start consolidating.
I've been hearing about the death of capitalism for a long time, and not yet.
No, not at all. And I think, when we talk about marijuana, like I think about weed is in the same way of like the coffee boom of coffee and cafe boom of like the late 90s, early 2000s, right? Because here, it took a long time for a lot of Starbucks to get into this city of Detroit proper, right? You had Big B and Caribou and all these other sort of regional or mid-sized retailers of coffee and cafes, and that's not even counting, your mom and pop cafes and stuff like that. We're in the early stages of that. We're about to see sort of the larger national brands come in, have the biggest footprint, and you might have one or two mom and pop shops. But I think the issue, or not necessarily the issue, but the interesting thing that I see about cannabis is that, you guys are right. You're talking about the opportunity and how much money was expected to come from it. But how much opportunity was actually there to begin with? Like, how many... You can only smoke so much weed, just like you can only drink so much coffee. So there's I understand that there's a difference in product, but
you had a line before we got started. Crack me up.
Well, I was wondering what happened to Chris Webber's $150 million cannabis carnival that was going to be on Michigan Avenue in Corktown there. I mean, it sounded fantastic, even not as a smoker, but I don't know what happened to it.
Well, I mean, it just there wasn't there was not the margin for this.
Didn't math.
The math didn't math.
Can I ask Norris a question? And just only because I know that you are more of an enjoyer than I am personally. I don't really do it at all, anymore. So you mentioned that, and it got me thinking about like that versus like alcohol, which something more of a vice that I partake in. Is it perhaps that it's a different trajectory? Like you said, you can only smoke so much, or blank is enough cannabis to satisfy this. Whereas alcohol, it's a different kind of curve. You know what I mean? Like you can drink more. You could have 2 drinks. You could have 8 drinks. And there's a market where it just keeps going.
The biggest thing, and here's the last frontier of it, I think, at least in Southeast Michigan, is the social aspect of alcohol. Alcohol, like when you really think about it, there's almost no social gathering between adults that does not involve alcohol.
And in Michigan, I think we only have one. Like, we do not have many consumption lounges in Michigan at all.
No. So if you were able to sort of add the public or social consumption aspect to it with like coffee houses like that, Amsterdam style coffee houses, I think then you would see a marketed bump up in the market,
or upcharge for the experience, right?
Yes.
Like the difference between, I guess I'm thinking about it again in my ways of like, I can go, I can buy a bottle of Jim Beam for $12 at the store, but if I go to go get a cocktail at Grey Ghost with Jim Beam in it, it may be,
$14.
It would be $14 for a single cocktail. And so like, you don't really have that with marijuana. There's not scalability with like, you can upcharge for the experience, for the drink, for the whatever.
Yeah. And especially because we know the prices of marijuana kind of bottomed out, and, so it's easy to go buy like a eighth or a quarter for, X amount of dollars and just take it home and just have it. You know what I mean?
It's a different like experience and consumption.
There's also a different stigma around it, because although there are neighborhoods where they're like, hey, I don't want a bar near me, there's still places that have a corner bar. There's still places where it's perfectly fine to be in a residential neighborhood in the suburbs and there's a bar at the end of the block.
I can make an argument that it's kind of not even a real neighborhood unless it has a bar.
Yeah.
Like that's the thing.
Coffee shop,
bar, restaurant, school.
But I'm even thinking in the
firehouse.
But I'm even thinking in the most suburban of places, not even like, the middle of the city, but like you go out to the suburbs and there are lots of places that have that hole in the wall bar. You go out to the far east side, you go into Macomb County, you go to the basement bar that's out there in Mount Clemens, or all these other ridiculous like places. One name that sticks in my head that I'll never forget is Tipsy McStaggers, because that's a hilarious name for a bar. That's over by the GM Tech Center.
Yeah.
But you have all these little places that are really near houses and near all these different things that you would never see that with a consumption lounge.
We also have to be honest, and we have to be fair and talk about, the 100+ year head start that, the alcohol
hundreds of years.
Yeah, hundreds of years of, I'm talking about specifically like post-prohibition alcohol lobby that exists within the country. And marijuana has really only just now getting started on that entire apparatus. There's really only just now in the past 30 years been a marijuana lobby apparatus in America. There have been people who have been proponents, but in terms of actually saying we have people in Washington who are talking to lawmakers to legalize marijuana, that is a fairly recent phenomenon.
And finally, speaking of politics, I mean, I think it would be very smart for federal politics, politicians at a federal level and at a state level, certainly, to kind of lean into this and say, well, let's look at some of these people who are incarcerated or have been incarcerated for a long time on petty, seemingly now petty marijuana charges. What are we doing to remedy that?
I think this is part of that, though.
And
right?
I think that if something happens, I think it's a political opportunity, but it actually is a real opportunity to hopefully get some of these people out of incarceration.
Especially regardless of the business impact, I think that's a big deal because there's a lot of people. And look, the numbers are frankly completely unfair when it comes to who's been jailed and incarcerated around this stuff. You look at the numbers, you can't say that it's a balanced system, right?
No, and so that's why I think it's a smart political move, and it's also just the right move. So I hope that people like, Biden administration, Whitmer administration, who I think are kind of open to this, do something about it.
Well, I'd love to hear what people think. dailydetroit@gmail.com or 313-789-3211. Leave a voicemail. We hit a whole bunch of topics on this beef episode, guys.
Yeah, most definitely.
With that, I'm Jer Stays.
I'm Devon O'Reilly.
And I'm Norris Howard.
Thank you so much for listening. Remember to drop 5 stars on your favorite podcast app and tell us, is this what you got what you wanted? I have literally like 100 emails saying, hey, bring Norris and Devon together. We did it just for you.
Just for y'all, man. And don't forget, it's Norris History Month, my birthday.
All right. I will observe.
I love that. Norris History. So what month is your birthday?
September.
Okay, so September is Devon History. I like
right.
this.
I'll remind you.
All right. Well, thank you so much for listening. Remember that you are somebody, and we'll see you around Detroit.